Waiting for the on-air sign. There we go. Okay, we are on air. And we'll go ahead and get started with the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for April 27th, 2023. Thank you all for attending and anyone watching at home. We've got 3 items on the agenda today. The first one is our regular report and update on public transit in Norman. Again, every month in this committee, we get an update from city staff about the current state of public transit, transit ridership numbers, updates on projects that we have ongoing, including the bus transfer station, bus routes, and future plans. So again, if you're interested in that issue, that topic, this is the committee to tune into on the 4th Thursday of every month. So we'll go ahead and get started with Taylor's here to give us the report on public transit.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'll go through, highlight a few things on the memo and then talk about ridership like always and answer any question. So for the transit center, we began asbestos removal. Well, they started setting up this week and they should start removal tomorrow once state inspection's complete. So we're finally getting along on that so we can get back into the interior in a couple weeks and start moving along. Roof's done. Really nice to have that done. They've done a lot of work on the outside, but haven't been able to get in there. We'll know further what the delay is once they're able to get in there. We had some scheduling issues with the remediation company, but we are looking at pushing that start date back for the routes. OKC is actually planning on starting their route changes October 1st. So we might think that's a good regional approach of one message, one route change for the entire metro. So that's kind of what we're thinking.
It's my birthday too.
Well, there you go.
So transit,
Take a new
exchange. There we go.
For grants, we submitted with council approval by resolution, we submitted a grant to the FTA bus and bus facilities and lower no emission grants for 6 CNG cutaway buses or those large paratransit vehicles. We submitted to both applications just by pretty much checking a box, so both funding measures could fund them, but hopefully that doubles our chances. So we'll hear back from that in the next couple of months. For microtransit, the vendors during the question and answer period asked for an extension of a couple weeks, so we're going to give them till May 5th to respond. That is exactly 2 weeks longer than originally planned. So once we get all the proposals back on May 5th, we'll review them and hopefully come to council with something in, I think the first meeting in June is what we're looking at, hopefully.
Perfect.
And then I just want to go to the ridership, similar to February where we saw a big gain. March also had a large increase. And specifically I want to talk about the total daily ridership, the average total daily ridership. We eclipsed 1,200 for March, which is pretty good. 1,204 for March 2023, and that's a 33% increase over March 2022 of 907. So I know I talked the last few months of trying to eclipse that 1,000 person average daily mark, and we're exceeding that pretty well. So we're getting, we're actually doing a little bit better than pre-COVID numbers, I think. If we go back that far to the CART days, we didn't really have a pre-COVID number as a city, but I think we're doing fairly well, and I'm excited to see where this fiscal year wraps up in terms of total ridership, which you can see there. We're 22 and a quarter increase of last fiscal year to date.
So that's fiscal year to date, 239,740.
Right.
It's 239,740 road trips that are not being taken by individual cars. Just want to note that when we talk about traffic congestion, that came up last night in the in several of the groups I saw was traffic in the future. So just noting that it makes a difference.
It does make a difference.
And yes, all the routes, once again, seems like every month all the routes are showing increases over, and just, coming out of COVID last year,
Right.
Rising up. But yeah, seems like every month we're seeing increases, significant ones on each route every month.
Right.
Even the west one.
I'm happy to take any questions.
Councilmember Schuler?
I don't know if, I'm trying to remember,
since this was a while ago, but I asked in the budget hearing on Tuesday about the 2 vehicles that we are purchasing out of that money for, like mobile crisis response. Where, like, what's the timeline on those vehicles? And does that fall under?
Somewhat, yeah. We ordered them. I've actually been pushing the vendor to give me a timeline, so I'm sorry I can't actually tell you. I've been pushing him the last 2 weeks. I hope I can get that to you by tomorrow. I'll try to get a hold of him.
Okay. And can you remind us what style of vehicle we are purchasing?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with it's a ProMaster, it's a little bit bigger than the Sprinter vans that you might see around town. We have one ProMaster in our fleet already. Just again, kind of a larger one of those Sprinter vans, and that's what we opted to go with.
Okay. And that, I mean, the intent of that was so that they could be multifaceted in case we needed to kind of be nimble and transition them into other spaces within our fleet and things like that.
And fully accessible.
Yeah.
That's a key factor.
Yeah, and they're a little bit easier to get around than those bigger cutaway vehicles, but they're also not a minivan, so.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
So we have one electric bus so far. Is it in service already fully?
Yeah, we have both of them,
We
but
have
only
both.
one of them has been formally accepted. Just like the nature of anything, it got here and there was a coolant leak, just a couple of recall. So we accepted one, but we noticed there were some programming issues. These things are big giant computers. Honestly, with the keep warm function. So if it's 30 degrees outside, we want the batteries to be able to start, right? It's a little bit different with an internal combustion engine versus a battery electric. So we've worked with the manufacturer. We think we have a fix. We're just waiting to finalize that, and we hope to have the second one formally accepted. But yes, the first one has been in service.
Fully?
Yeah, it's been on the road. We're actually waiting on to do our first PM on it, which is interesting. We've never done a PM on an electric vehicle before, so.
Okay. All right, and let's see. I think I had. So it was brought to my attention since our last meeting that this really is more about the cart routes, but that I guess an apartment complex decided not to sponsor a stop anymore on Chautauqua, and now there's not a bus stop, or there will be because maybe a nonprofit is taking over the adoption of it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
So I've had people asking about, will we ever bring service, or will we, and maybe the microtransit could help address that situation if it works out. But we're not set up to where stops would be eliminated because an apartment complex manager decided they didn't want to
No,
have it in front anymore.
no,
Ours-
we're not set up like that, no.
So that's kind of, I guess, my concern about, I guess, the campus route system being separate from our own is that, one, the concerns from residents when school's not in session, how are they going to get to the city station when there's no service on campus? Or if and I know that stop, it's right by the 7-Eleven on Chautauqua and Imhoff, and I guess the Brentwood Apartments. And I know when I've been by there, I generally see people standing out there, so that's just a concern that was brought up to us, and I was like, well, that is the campus system, and ours is different, but
Yeah. Well, and if I'm correct, there's still a stop at Traditions West, a little bit further north across the street.
yes, there is.
And then a stop further south at
Post
Post
Oak.
Oak.
Okay.
So we don't have anything to do with that, but if those stops are still there, there's still a little bit of access. Honestly, it's really nice that the campus still has the transit system, because
Yeah.
that just kind of makes our reach, or transit's reach, go a little bit farther than what we're able to provide. So, but I did not know that, so.
Okay. Any other questions from committee about public transit? Okay, thanks, Taylor.
Take a second.
All right, our next item on the agenda is a update on the Gray Street two-way project. We've got Scott Sturts here.
Get this pulled up real quick. So yeah, appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you about this. We're excited about the project. Frustrated about parts of it too, but very excited about other parts of it.
Yes. Very.
So just to kind of put it all back in perspective, there are a lot of activity going on in downtown. We've been handing this or versions of this out for a very long time, for several years now, showing all the activity in the downtown area. Obviously, the Porter Avenue and Acres is complete. We got the Porter Streetscape, which is currently under construction. We got the James Garner Phase 2, which is north of Acres all the way back up to Flood, currently under construction. So the next one up is the Gray Street two-way, and then we'll be following up with the James Garner Phase 3. So a lot of activity, and we're obviously got 2 projects kind of touching here, going to be adding a third at some point. So we're watching closely when we think we're going to maybe overload the citizens here, but being mindful of that as we go.
They voted for it.
They did. They voted for all those projects. So this is just kind of a reminder of what the 2019 Transportation Bond Program looks like. Just a reminder, it's all around town. There's lots of projects, 19 in total. You can see there the blue area in the middle. Those were the projects that were proposed to be funded completely by bond funds, not with federal funding. And we've kind of switched some of that around because the rules changed on the funding, and we wanted to make sure we could maximize what we're spending on, and actually Gray Street is a beneficiary of that. So this is kind of going back to back when we were out there presenting to everybody in town and presenting all the 2019 bond programs, downtowners and aviation and Rotary Club and anybody else who wanted to listen. This was basically the sheet that we were using. So this is kind of at the genesis of it all. And the scope of work there was traffic signal modifications, intersection widening, 4-quadrant gate system at the railroad crossing, and then, of course, restriping and signage to make this a 2-way street. This is kind of how we've revised that as we've gone on and added a few new items to it as we've worked with council and worked through the plans with our consultants. Obviously, so the traffic signal modifications, the intersection, the railroad crossing improvements, restriping and signage, but we've added the reverse angle parking, which I think is a great addition, and we'll be looking at some drawings here in a minute. We'll be able to see where that's going to be going in. We've added some landscape islands at the railroad. We're looking now at beginning the construction in 2023 and completing it in 2024. So that's still kind of holding true. There's still a lot going into that right now, but just to kind of give you an idea where this is at. The project cost there, you can see local, about $2.8 million. We've been able to get about $2.25 million of federal money. Kind of the short story on that is they offered us what was left over on Jenkins. And we realized that $1.7 million on Jenkins was really not going to help us. This was the next rated project. They allowed us to bump it down to this project because that amount of money on this project was significant. And then in the latest round of funding, as we're always out there chasing grant money, we got $500,000 in CRISA money to be added to this project, so we're able to get more funding into it. So that's how we've gotten now to our total of about $2.25 million in federal funding, which is very exciting. We're very grateful to have that funding added to this project. Of course, with that comes a few red tape there that we got to deal with. So as we're doing this, during the project design, we kept looking, we kept trying to find ways to make this a nicer corridor in addition to just making it a 2-way street. So as we were doing that, we looked at a lot of the things that we think kind of make it a nice streetscape project. So we've added some bulb outs at some of the intersections. It doesn't work at all intersections, but it does work at some. We've added those to shorten those pedestrian crossings, particularly east and west across the cross streets, because we're keeping 3 lanes. We really can't change much on that on Gray itself. We've added landscaping at the intersections. Like I said a minute ago, we added some landscaping there at the railroad crossing where we've got to do the curb medians in the middle. We were able to do some traffic access management. There were some drives that are no longer being used that the owners of those properties said, yeah, we'd be happy to have that curbed and have parking instead of a drive into a building. I think one of them is actually at the Standard that we're actually doing that with. So we looked at that, and there were some other places we were able to eliminate some driveways to try to make this a little bit nicer section. Lighting. So if you look at the traffic signals, there's lights on a lot of those traffic signals. So 10 of them are going to remain on those lights, and they're all LED. There are 11 old lights that we're removing, And if you look there on the far right, that's the old gray. I took that today on the walk down to the Standard. Actually, it was on the way back from the Standard for lunch. So you can see that's what we're replacing. And we're going to be replacing it with the black poles there that are there on the left of it. So a much nicer looking pole. Taking those overhead lines, putting them underground, so there's not going to be any overhead lines on Gray Street in the future. So, and in this corridor, there's no electric or overhead lines other than those because they're actually in the alleyways. So it's a very easy corridor to do that dress up on it, make it look a lot better. And then we're adding 27 new LED light fixtures. So you can see we're putting in quite a few more lighting, so it's going to have a lot better lighting down through the corridor. And then also, we're going to be adding some street furniture. The locations aren't finalized yet. We're still working on that. But some benches and some trash cans will be something very similar to what we're doing there on Main Street. And what's not listed here is we've also, and I'm going to go ahead and show you on this one, you can see that we're going to be doing the design that we had there in all the intersections on Main Street. We're going to extend it to this corridor. So it's going to bring it all together really nicely and make it a really nice flow through. Something that we initially didn't have it in all the locations, and we said let's add it all the way through because we felt like that was an important thing to add. You can also see we're adding a lot of street trees. And so, I mean, you can always add more. Street trees are real funny. Everybody likes them until they're in front of their property, and then they hate them and they want it in front of their neighbor's property. We fought that on the Main Street a lot, hearing this. Move it over in front of theirs. And it's like, no, it's going right here. But you can see we're doing a lot of that. You can see some of that reverse angle parking here. So that first intersection on the top is University. So that's where we're starting the project. And you can see where we got it coming in. So excited to get those things added in here. And then as you go down there on the lower, you can see there on the far right-hand side, the Jones and James Garner, where they'll both have the design there in the intersections. You can see we're going to be adding those landscaped islands. So part of our working with the railroad is we have to have a curb median so that people can't cut through, and that keeps us from having to do quad gates. And we're still working with the railroad, and I'll discuss some more about that here in a minute.
And there will be a traffic light at Gray and James
Yes,
Garner?
yes. It will be a signalized intersection, and then with the James Garner Phase 3, we'll be adding that
And
into that
is,
section.
you're able to coordinate that new traffic light with the train crossing? Is that how I understand it?
That's where what we're working on now.
Okay.
And that is all turned into the railroad, has been for a while. We're waiting for their response. And then they will tell us how much they're going to charge us to build all the gates and all the coordination. But we are doing it for both intersections to make sure that everything is coordinated and works properly.
Okay, and is the intent, because of the median, which I like for sure, is the intent that people going west on Gray will not be turning right south onto James Garner from that intersection? Or?
No, because it does, no, that's actually still,
Okay.
they're still able to turn there, and there will still be a usable intersection. And they'll be able to go whichever direction. It ends. The other thing that was kind of awkward here is those have to be a certain length. They have to be 60 foot from the railway. I can't give you the exact numbers. And because of that, we had to just tweak that intersection a little bit over to the west just to make it fit. We actually submitted the initial design for that intersection or that crossing there and the intersections and everything in October of 21 to the railroad. So we've been 18 months working with the railroad and trying to get everything finalized and successfully moving forward.
That'll clean up it's just like a fork right now where right where you have a makeshift.
Yes, yeah.
Really, I think that's what it was described as. We
yeah,
just kind of did that.
The way I've had it explained is there was an alleyway there and people were using it and it got paved to make it better. So I think that we've all lived with it. It's kind of one of those interesting things about downtown Norman. But no, James Garner will be the thoroughfare all the way through, and this is just going to be one of the intersections on that.
Okay. Councilor Pico.
This might be getting into the weeds a little bit, but I see a pretty thick, substantial sidewalk over here on the James Garner side, and it looks fairly thin on the other parts. I mean, do we have an idea what the width of that sidewalk is going to be consistently?
So the railroad required us to put in a 10-foot rail.
Okay.
They said it's got to be a 10-foot sidewalk, and we're not going to do it.
I love it.
It's already 10 foot on the east side of the tracks to Jones.
Okay.
We'll be extending it that way on the other. We're really constrained more by space than anything throughout this corridor.
That's why I was wondering.
To give you an example, on Main Street, that's an 80-foot wide right-of-way from front to front. Here, it's 80 foot. So we've lost 10 foot either side. So in a lot of places, and you can see it, especially in front of the storefronts, right now, it's it's a little less than a 7-foot sidewalk.
Okay.
And in some places, because we all drive there, I hate when I have to drive around that truck that's sticking out continually.
Yeah.
So we've had to widen that just a little, or that parking space just a little bit. So really, in some places, we're looking at more like a 6-foot sidewalk.
Okay.
So that's kind of our constraint, really, is just space. We just don't have a lot to work with.
Where are those problem spots primarily? Can you think of where they?
Basically, anywhere you have the buildings up to the building line,
Which is what we want.
which is which is a lot of it down through there. And then also when you get like to where the city parking lot is and that whole block on the south side,
Right.
there's parking lots directly at the property line. So there we're constrained. We could bump it out, make a little bit wider sidewalk through there, but then you'd have, at the start, you'd be at 5 foot, then widen it out, and then be going back. We want to try to at least keep a contiguous look and flow through the entire corridor.
Did we consider narrowing the lane widths at all, like we did on James Garner? Just to
Well,
buy a
we're not redoing curb and gutter here.
Okay, there you go.
So all we're gonna do is after we're done with the project, we're gonna come through, we're gonna do all the lighting.
Okay.
We're gonna do the sidewalk work, and then we're gonna come through and we're gonna do a 4.5-inch mill. And then we're gonna come through and put new asphalt down and restripe.
Okay.
So it's going to look like a new street.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of areas where we are doing the work because of the parking. But in a lot of the areas, we're leaving the existing curbs, so we're not changing the road width.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, and we're already down to 11s. So
Okay. Well, that's-
you could go to 10, you could gain 3, but
Yeah.
that's about we really don't like to go narrower than that. And at that point, people really start getting uncomfortable. 11's a pretty,
No, that should be narrow enough to where it actually slows down the cars a little bit.
yeah, it does as a good,
Achieves what we're trying
Right.
to get, so okay, I appreciate the answer.
right.
Councilmember Grant?
Speaking of a contiguous look, are all the sidewalks gonna be new, or are we still leaving parts?
Almost all of the sidewalk will be new. And the areas that
80%?
aren't going to be, I think it's probably higher than that. The area that we're not replacing is actually the area here across the City Hall campus because it's actually behind the right-of-way. We could do it, but that's just kind of a good cost-saving location. And then in front of the post office, it actually goes onto their property, not in the right-of-way, when you go around their parking. So not replacing it there. And there's a couple of very small areas, but the rest of it's almost all being replaced. So just kind of to finish out there through the corridor, you can see, the Jones, Peters, Crawford, and again, street trees, parking where we can fit it in. We're not trying to sandwich a spot everywhere we can, but trying to get it where it makes sense, where we can get it enough to where it may be able to help those property owners.
Councilmember Grant?
Speaking of like maybe encouraging other modes of traffic, do we get some bike racks on this, or could we?
We could probably look into it. They'd have to be on the bulb outs. That's really the only place where there's adequate space to be able to put bike racks at all because of, like I said, this 80-foot right-of-way that we have to deal with. We can investigate that and see if we can.
Is it something maybe a property owner who?
We would work with any property owner that wanted to. We would count that as street furniture, much like we would benches or trash cans or anything else. So we'd be willing to work if a property owner said we'd like to try to do something. Obviously, a great place would be the bike shop that's open there on Gray. Be a great place to have a bike rack out front.
Coffee shop?
A coffee shop. So that's something we could definitely look into, and we'd be happy to work with any property owner if they said we'd like to add to it. So yeah, that's something that could be considered, and we'll look at that with our consultants and see if we maybe can sneak a couple in here and there.
Strategically place them.
Yeah, like I said, the problem is they're going to be basically at the bulb outs. So, and
We should also talk to Norman Arts Council, because I think they're ready to do another round of their artistic kind of bike rack competition, so that would make
And-
perfect sense for this.
And those are nice because they're pretty compact. It's not like if you put 2 or 3 of the U ones together that take up more space. Those are very compact. They're in line. They
it's more of
do
a-
work really well, and they're cool.
They're more placemaking
Yeah.
than like a
Those are
traditional.
Kind of the style I was thinking, because if you had specific places like the bike shop
Mm-hmm.
or a coffee shop, you'd have some fun things to do
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, there's lots of options that we can do there.
I like that.
And I think they haven't tackled Gray Street exactly for this reason, that
Yeah.
this project was coming, so it might be a perfect thing for them to take on. They really kind of exhausted Main Street
Yeah.
and Campus Corner.
And then kind of to loop back to the lighting for a second, as I was walking back, I noticed that like this block, the only street lights are at the intersections. Well, that's not gonna be the case anymore. There's gonna be street lights in the middle
That's great.
to help get it looking a lot better.
I know it's not on here in this proposed design, but was there any discussion about adding on-street angled parking in front of the municipal complex in between the sidewalk?
There was
I know
discussion
there's
on
room
that.
to do it, but
There was discussion on that, and it really, at some point, we were trying to kind of pick where there were businesses that would really benefit from it more. And it did kind of come down, I mean, that, we didn't really plan on adding in the initial scope. So we did at some point have to kind of start looking at it as cost issue of where do we add it and not add it.
just know the parking in front of City Hall, sharing it with post office. And we're gonna be putting in some electric stations in the next year or so, I guess. And so just to maybe that's a future
Yeah, that's what
potential
we-
addition to parking here at City Hall is the street parking out there.
Absolutely. Those are things that can, and that's, once you have the street done well, and the sidewalks won't be in the way there, so it would just be an addition of just cutting out the curb, doing the dirt work, paving, curbs, stripe.
Okay.
So it'd be a fairly easy addition at a later date.
Okay. Are there any like major underground utilities you guys are gonna have to work with on this?
No, we had very little, utilities were basically out of the way. I think we thought we were going to have a problem with a gas, and I think to come in the end, there really wasn't an issue. If you remember, a year ago, utilities came through and redid the water line all the way through here. That was a coordinated effort with us and utilities to get out ahead of this project, get that done to where they're not coming in and tearing up all of our brand new stuff. And we coordinated very well. I think there's actually some areas that they rebuilt new ramps and built them to ADA standards with our help. I think we may be using some of those, but not many. So that's always a good thing for us to try to add. I would point out, if you look there in the lower left hand, that's the intersection at Santa Fe, so right here across from us. You can see that's one of the locations where we were able to add bump outs on Santa Fe to make that less, because there was the parking on the parallel parking on both sides. It was a great location to do it. And actually, one of the property owners actually had requested that we do that. So it's a place where we were able to work with the property owner to come up with something to help benefit the entire corridor and make it better.
Or they like how it shortens the distance?
Yeah,
pedestrian crossing?
yeah, it shortens those distances, makes it safer. Doesn't make it quite like you're running across 4 lanes when it's really only 2. So, and in some other areas that it seemed like it made sense for a bump out, when you really do it, it really made the intersection offset and really bad. So there were some other locations where we would have liked to have done it that we just really, it didn't function properly to do it in some other locations. Just a blow up, just to show you guys what these kind of look like. You can see the one there on the left is Gray and Crawford. And you can see a lot of, some landscaping going in there, a lot of effort to try to make this nice. Again, I think landscaping is kind of like street trees. Someone's going to love it. Someone else is going to say you should have put a different plant in there. But we at least want to make an attempt to it and have this looking, really sharp at the beginning. And then you can see there to the right is the blow up of what's going on there at the rail crossing.
And you don't anticipate there being an issue with people trying to turn left and go south on James Garner? And is it going to cause there's not a turn lane right there. It's one lane and the median, so.
We've looked at it. Our consultants have looked at it, and no one has raised any major concerns at this point.
Okay.
So we did have community coordination on this. We've tried to reach out and work with our partners. We did work, Cameron Brewer had asked a couple of times to look at the plans through here, and we tried to work with him, obviously eliminating a driveway that's no longer necessary. We also worked with Ashley Adair. She's looked at some of the plans through there, and Brad Worcester sat in my office and we had a long conversation, and I showed him plans. We also reached out and sent a notification to all 33 property owners in the corridor to let them know that this was happening. I think we had about 10 that wanted to have further discussions. We met with all of them. We've presented this to Norman Downtowners multiple times. It's up on normanstreets.com, and I think what's up there is accurate. In fact, I think that what you have today are some updated drawings of what's actually on normanstreets.com, because we added the intersection design all the way through the corridor to make it unique, make it really something special. And really, we haven't had any negative comments. Most people have been really supportive and really in favor of this project as we've gone through. So project schedule, this is where my heart rate and my blood pressure both go through the roof. So on October 25th, we got the preemption agreement from ODOT for the BNSF. So that's what you were speaking of, how everything will coordinate with the railroad and their signaling. So we got that, and we turned around and we submitted plans and fees to ODOT for that preemption report is what we'll get back from them per the preemption agreement in November. In January, we did a 90% plan submittal to ODOT. Because we're getting federal money, ODOT will run this project, which is the same thing as we have right now on James Garner and on Porter Streetscape. So we did that, and they actually did the field review for us. I didn't think they were going to do that until we got everything back from BNSF, but they decided to move forward. So basically, we are at ODOT sitting at 90% plans, which means we could be out to bid in 30 days from our part, from January. But we're still waiting on the preemption report from the BNSF. That's expected in May. And then with that, we'll also get the construction agreement. That construction agreement is going to be contingent upon the preemption report. In that agreement, because there is the funding tied to it, and it is a contract with BNSF and ODOT, it's a three-party agreement, that will have to come to the council for approval. So you'll see that, and as soon as we get it, that may be one of those items where we ask, can we get this on even though it's late, and try to get it for us as quick as we can. So if we got that in May and got it all through, that means in July we put our final bid documents in to ODOT, which is typically 90 days prior to when they bid. We will ask for a 60-day to try to compact our schedule. They have been pretty good at working with us because our plans are typically in pretty good, they're typically really good when we submit them. So that would put us into October for our bid opening. It takes about 90 days to get that rolling with ODOT. And so looking at a January 2024 construction and completing it by December. We're doing everything we can to make this faster. We're not pleased with where we're at on the schedule. We're a little bit handcuffed here by BNSF, but we are making phone calls. We're calling ODOT, we're calling BNSF. We're doing everything we can to try to be the squeaky wheel. So if we get anything moving faster, that will be fantastic. And with that, if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer it or get you any information that we can't give you today.
Well, I think one of the things we wanted to just make sure of is that we weren't having to cut anything back, or that we weren't going to do sidewalks or something because there wasn't funding or anything like that, because I think we all feel pretty strongly that don't really want to come back in after we do this and rip up sidewalks or do stuff again. So we'd like to get it, whatever needs to be done with this project. And so we want to make sure that sidewalks are included, and if not, do we need to make a budget adjustment to get it done? Because I think there would be some support for that potentially if we needed to.
I was looking at the demolition plans before this meeting to make sure that I had it clear, and the main areas are this campus and then the post office, which is the post office we probably, because like I said, it goes in off right away, we probably wouldn't do it anyways. Okay. And because we'd have to look into, well, we don't have to go there, but that would be a post office item. But there's very small sections, and what we'll probably find when we get out there is we'll just say, yeah, take it all.
Yeah, so I think we also kind of didn't want to see like a patchwork of brand new sidewalk and then a patch of worn down. Maybe it's not cracked, so it's still in good shape, but it's discolored, it's worn down, it's worn by weather, and so we kind of want, I think, at least me anyway, a uniformed look and similar to what we see on Porter and Main Street. That just continuation of that, I think, is what we wanted to make sure was going to be included, and if not, if we need to make any adjustments to make sure it was.
Almost every block is full replacement.
Okay.
Is every block getting street furniture and all the amenities, extra amenities?
That's what we're working on now, and again, some of that does come down to space.
Sure.
Not all the intersections have the same amount of space, and it can vary depending on which way the angled parking is in that area as to how much space is actually available. So that's what we're We discussed that at the 90% plans with our consultant, and we really just haven't been, until we get more information, that's just kind of an ongoing discussion, but we want to get it anywhere it makes sense that, you know.
You think we have the budget to cover all the places that we could put it?
As we get forward, we'll know more about that and be able to look at that more.
And I was just curious, what's the narrowest and widest again? If you said it, was it like 7 to 10 feet?
I'm going to say we're probably going to be from 6 to 10 feet on this.
I think 5's our minimum. I don't think we have
There may be, the block,
space in some spots.
the block where the city parking lot is may be the only 5-foot section. But it varies, but we're trying to maximize it everywhere we can, but a lot of spaces, it's literally curb to storefront.
And I know you said it's not a curb and gutter, Grace Street already has gutter system, right? A stormwater system underground.
Right.
Will we be replacing any of the curbs that might be cracked or busted off or fallen off? So maybe
If
not
we see
replace-
something that's damaged, yeah, we'll try to catch that and get it.
There's a few inlets that we're having to replace to fix some problems, and in those areas, obviously, we'll have to report. But a lot of those are ones where we're doing parking and having to massage some
Okay.
curbs anyway.
Well, I definitely didn't have any expectation that we'd be able to get 10-foot sidewalks on both sides based on where buildings are and stuff, but where possible. And I think one minor detail was the stamping on the concrete of the sidewalks that, how Main Street has it, and making sure that continues through, I think, too, is something more decorative look.
That's going to be, so where we have a 5 or 6 foot sidewalk, that's going to cut us down to a 3 or 4 foot walking area. So
Not the brick part, just the little outline.
the panes,
Yeah.
the window pane look, we hadn't really discussed that with our consultant, but we can definitely put that in the detail. We did discuss that we think we can do that.
That should be a low or no cost.
I would like to see it match. Porter's got that, Main Street's got it.
Right.
The Campus Corner.
Actually,
has it.
Porter doesn't have the panes,
Right,
but it
it's
has
got
the
the-
brick runner.
it's
So
got
what
the
you'd have is you'd
lines
either
too.
have the brick runner, the pane, or both through the whole area.
Yeah, Main Street has both, right?
Main Street has both. On Main Street, I believe it's 10 or 12 inch offset from the edges of each panel. With this smaller panel, we'd probably go to maybe 3, 4, 6 max. Otherwise, if you go a foot in, it's going to look really awkward. But we'll work with our landscape architect who did all of the street scape on this and ask them what they think would be a good, and we can ask to add that to the project.
Trying to catch these little details that we might think about.
Now's
after
the time.
it's done. Yeah. Councilor Peacock.
Speaking of little details, are there any WPA sidewalks in this area? I feel like they're with the stamp in them. It's actually got the 1937 WPA logo in there.
I don't think so.
It'd be nice to preserve those if possible, or just maybe a little
They are in
cut of-
Porter. There is a couple of them.
I don't really know how you preserve them without, I mean. 'cause
We
don't
have
want-
one in our offices now that when they were doing one of the sidewalk projects, we just had them, they cut it out. It's just a block.
It's just a
the
cool little
WPA.
stamp and a piece of Norman's history, I'd love to. I'd hate to just
I
paint
don't
over
believe
it.
there is, but what we can do is we can look at that when we get closer to, or what we'll do is we'll inform our inspectors that if you see that, pull it, let's keep that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't recall seeing it.
Yeah, I
but-
I walked around the area and I remember seeing them somewhere, but I can't remember
Yeah,
where.
but we can stay aware of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from, okay. Are there any comments from downtown folks? Mr. Adair?
Scott, we bumped the timing on this from 22, 23, obviously, because you became eligible for federal funding. You tested my heart here, and you got $2.25 million in federal funding.
Yes, sir.
How much of the bond money is, at this point, is set aside to complete this project?
So the remainder is 2.8 for the construction,
2.8, and it was originally set in the bonds at $7 million?
5.3. So we're about half funding.
Saving about half.
Yeah.
Okay. The total is the same as the original.
I think that because we've added a lot of things, we've increased some of it because but we didn't have any right-of-way purchase costs, we didn't have any utility relocations, so we have some savings in some of those areas that we put in a little bit of funding for. And then I think we are gonna be using a little bit of that federal funding for some of the offsets, like, for example, the intersections, doing the decorative intersections is probably about $225,000. Okay, well, we can justify that.
There are rumors going around the project's being cut back, and we want to be able to.
There-
make
no.
sure that the funding that's not.
No, we've added more to this project. In fact, this project is way surpassed what I thought. I mean, I initially thought we were gonna put up signal poles, fix a few sidewalk ADA issues, do a mill and overlay, pave, stripe it and go. And now I would say that this is a full-blown streetscape project.
I definitely
Yeah.
appreciate your
Thank you for that.
Yes,
scope. Yeah.
and staff feels comfortable that the, I guess, subgrade of the street is in good enough shape where we're not gonna just repave it and then start.
Judging by what
Having
we see from the
potholes.
surface, we don't see those typical, what we call alligator cracking or anything that we think is causing major subsurface. But typically, if they find a small area, that will do what we call a deep patch, where they go down to the subgrade, they repair the subgrade, and they come all the way back up to the top. And if we were to find any areas, that would be something that would be done by the paving crew.
Porter and Eufaula intersections, the one I keep having to patch it and it keeps caving in every time.
Yeah, there's a lot going on
The
there.
trucks and, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot
so-
going on there.
Okay, any
Chairman,
other?
if I may, I wanted
Yes.
to just mention on the financing part, remember the strategy is that for every dollar of federal funds that we can apply to these projects, that will go to the projects in the program that are not getting the federal funds. So for instance, Cedar Lane Road is the next priority of council. We've gotten skunked on 3 applications, so.
Yes.
And that's a $10 million project.
Total
So we're
project.
trying to build a $10 million project of savings, of bond funds through these federally funded projects, so we can do one more project and not have another 36th Avenue Northwest
Right,
dilemma.
right. That is a issue for those that aren't aware, again, that a couple years ago, the formula changed for how federal funding is allocated to cities for road construction projects. And these widening projects on the edges of the city used to score very favorably for federal funding. And projects like Gray Street Two-Way and Porter and James Garner didn't score really anything. And now it's flipped over. Gray Street, Porter, James Garner, all receiving federal funding. 36th Avenue still can't. Cedar Lane and 36th Avenue East is a $20 million project or something like that, and isn't getting federal funding. And we've got Rock Creek Road, we've got 48th West, we've got Indian Hill, we've got multiple of these potential projects on the horizon that are voter approved, have to get them done at some point, but are going to be a challenge, as staff has pointed out, given
And
how much they cost and that there doesn't seem to be federal funding for them
And,
anymore.
and every time we see one of those notice of funding opportunity, a NOFO, we read it. Front to back. What, is there any chance here? And we've even tried chasing some of those, and even those are much more competitive than what we expected those to be.
We have gone directly to the senators' offices to talk to them about funding for 36th Avenue. So,
And, yeah, we wound up, they said, we can give you 1.5 million. Is what the final offer was, and I went, it doesn't really get me anywhere.
I'll take it, but.
Yeah.
a widen
so-
one lane
Yeah.
for a 1 mile. Okay, if there's no further questions about Gray Street, if everybody's clear, we'll go ahead and move on to our third item on the agenda, which is public parking in Norman. And with Taylor here to give us a presentation about this.
And this presentation originally stemmed from, I think it was your request, Councilmember Holman, for, about the parking signage to the Gray Street and Asp Avenue lots last month.
Okay.
And also just, where we at on rates. So, started off that way.
How much we're charging in our lots, Asp and
Right.
on Gray.
So,
Okay.
we expanded on that, as you probably heard, to talk about a proposal for next fiscal year, so we'll get into that.
Right, okay.
shortly. So, just want to go through the parking business plans that we, staff, rely on to manage the public paid parking in Norman, and then the studies and planning that have been done recently, and then again, the signage that's currently and proposed to those municipal-owned lots, and then the current rates, and then that proposal to meter downtown Main Street. So these parking business plans, I believe the first one was approved by council in 2013 for the downtown and the campus corner area. And it just lays out, hey, we're using this technology, these are the rates. really gives us an idea of how to move forward. And the city manager can revise those. So they've been revised 2015 and 2019. We're in sorely need of an update. We'll be working on that in the next couple months, trying to get that wrapped up. We're trying to make a transition of the parking management over from traffic to myself and my team, so that's a major change. And then there's the technology. The last 3 or 4 years has changed a lot, so we just need to update those and get them up to snuff. Yeah. And then the studies and planning, we've talked about these before. We have the comprehensive transportation plan, which is being updated. We have the Norman parking study that happened in 2016, and then the parking strategic plan that was approved in late 2018. The Norman parking study that was approved in 2016 was really commissioned to provide a blueprint for future parking improvements and expenditures. Talked about garages and we talked about the Asp Avenue lot. And then the parking strategic plan's primary goal is to try to help us figure out how to form an organizational structure. It expanded on the 2016 parking study by giving that organizational structure what do other cities' best practices are. And that's where we've been talking about the parking authority, and then transit came along, and now we're talking about the transit and parking authority, right? So I just want to mention some highlights from those studies and plans. They did acknowledge the need for additional parking in downtown and Campus Corner. Proposed sites for new parking structures, like I said, we've talked about those before. Again, created a separate parking fund, which we've actually created the fund, Transit and Parking Fund, just not an authority, so we've done that. We've kind of created a governance structure, and we're working on expanding on that with the authority possibly, and then hiring additional parking staff. I guess I'd count myself as that, since I'm kind of moving into overseeing parking. But other than that, we haven't added any additional parking dedicated staff. And then working on partner agencies on a possible parking authority, so we've talked about that before. Consistent management. We've worked on this for many years. So OU has the same pay station that Campus Corner has, that now Courthouse has, that Gray Street has. So all consistent. You can get on the same app and pay anywhere in Norman with the same method. So it's really nice. Enforcement, same thing. Just having it all catered to one system. And then the 2018 plan really talked about integration with multimodal future, talked about walkability, bikeability, and also about mass transit and moving towards travel demand management, which basically means how do we get people to these congested areas other than expanding parking? Yes, look at parking, but how do we get more people in there by utilizing the parking we have and maybe freeing those up for others to utilize the parking by getting people to walk, bike, etc. I would say the transit center going to downtown is a great way of getting people to downtown for restaurants, festivals, Legacy Trail. All those investments are getting people to and from downtown. So moving on to the signage. I thought I'd seen more, honestly, currently for the Gray Street lot, but we have the one moving. I should have put the street names a little bit bigger, but Main Street running through the middle there. That sign's on Main Street, obviously as you head east or northeast, pointing you to turn left onto, or turn left or north onto Peters to go to the public parking. So it's also saying you can go one more street. That's why there's two. There's additional arrow. You can go up to Crawford and also access the lot. So that's the current.
So might need to add some on Gray Street.
Maybe, but we do have a update coming with the wayfinding plan phase 2 to add 2 signs at Peters and Robinson. So pretty far removed from downtown, but obviously pointing people to what's available if you go down Peters. And one of those things is public parking. So we'll have one on the northeast corner of Peters and Robinson, and on the southwest, telling people they can go south on Peters to access public parking. So that's in the works. Those are what those signs would look like. That's what's in the plans. So that's for the Gray Street lot, and we can definitely look at some additional opportunities. But
Yeah, I might think about those on Porter, telling people to turn down
Turn
Gray
left
and
down Porter.
parking down there. Yeah, perhaps.
we can get together with David Riesland and talk about where there might be other opportunities And then for the Asp Avenue lot, north of Campus Corner, there's a few more current signages, more of the traditional style Big P parking, public parking
So I
signs.
was thinking of on like Porter or Gray Street was
Right.
those little ones, yeah.
So we have one on Buchanan, telling you if you go a little bit farther north there, you can turn right and go to public parking. And then on Asp, there's one right outside the lot that's double-sided. And then if you're heading north, there's also one on the east side on a light pole just past the Big Bear right there.
I feel like for that one, we need like one of those signs that's in the shape of an arrow and lights up around it and like points, but
Yeah.
it's
Please-
parking,
please come here.
public parking here, please, you can use it. Councilmember Grant?
I was gonna say, someone in our business community suggested advertising what it costs to park there as incentive, like maybe if people are not choosing it because they think it's cost prohibitive.
Is
So-
it currently still the same price as the metered parking, street parking on Campus
Yes,
Corner?
it is
Which was $1
a
an hour?
dollar an hour.
So I remember we discussed that before, that maybe, you know, the parking in front of businesses on Campus Corner can probably merit the $1 an hour based on the convenience and the limited number, but maybe the parking lot that's a little further away can't quite get the same value to people that are looking for parking, I guess.
Yeah, and that would encourage people to park in the lot, but, and maybe free up on-street parking too. You might be
maybe-
willing to walk where I'm not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
that's-
So maybe if it was 50 cents an hour instead of
Right.
$1, maybe that 50 cents savings is worth walking 2 blocks. It would be to me. I don't know.
So, in the parking business plan,
It's not even 2 blocks.
we'll include that as a consideration.
Okay,
And think about that.
maybe that'll help get
Right.
it used more.
We do, going on to, if we're done with this one right here, to the rates. We do use that lot, you can see at the bottom left, for game days. It's $25 a day for those game day parking, those 6 days a week. So that lot is heavily used on those days, but obviously we might be able to capitalize more if we lower the rate during the week. Going over this table, we charge $1 per hour at Campus Corner, on-street, and Nass Avenue parking lot, as we just talked about. Hours are Monday through Saturday, 8 to 9. And then in the East Gray Street lot, or the Gray Street lot, and the county courthouse, we just charge the 25 cents an hour, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. So that's the current rate for the public parking that we charge. Obviously, OU might charge something different, but that's the current city setup.
And so downtown, we're still only enforcing till 5, right?
That's
And
my
so it's free
understanding.
parking after 5, free on the weekends.
That's my understanding.
But on Campus Corner, 8 to 9 p.m., Monday through Saturday. And including the Asp Street lot do we have somebody currently enforcing it at nighttime? I know we originally had a dedicated parking enforcement officer for Campus Corner.
So parking enforcement is under PD, and I don't know where they're at with their positions, but I believe that the part-time person, whether it's filled or not, is supposed to cover the evenings and Saturday. That's my understanding. So I can reach out to them and see if they have that position filled. I think they had it posted for a while, so they might be having some trouble. All right. So now on to the proposed FY24 metering downtown recommendation. And we got this from the past plans and studies. The 2016 plan, I don't really think I need to read it to you guys, but did talk about maybe installing it in the central business district to increase availability, encourage turnover. The 2018 plan talks about make downtown parking more visitor friendly, operational policies, upgrade technology, pace, which we see as the pay station, enhance parking revenues. Also in the 2018 plan, they talk about what it would look like to meter 200 spots in the downtown area. They go through kind of a pro forma approach, looking at that and seeing what kind of revenues will be generated, and again, pointing to the turnover and other things that happen whenever you start metering downtown. So a lot of words on the screen, but generally we're talking about 12 parking pay stations in the downtown area at about $88,000. We asked our partners at Flowbird, and they recommended one per block, and we're talking from University to Porter, and one per each side of the block, I'm sorry. So 6 blocks, one on the north side, one on the south side. Placement may vary. We'd have to look at that.
Yeah, isn't it our downtown blocks? I wouldn't say abnormally longer than other cities, but like our downtown block is twice as length as Portland, Oregon downtown or something like that.
I don't know that. That would be interesting to find out. But I was driving and looking at it the other day. This might be something if we did move forward with the proposal and we looked at it and said, yeah, that one's too long of a walk. We may have to reconsider maybe placing 2 on one side of the street. Some of the blocks I think could work with one, or most of them could. And we may get into it and get I'm sorry.
400 feet,
Okay.
yeah. I think in Portland they're 230 or something
Yeah,
like that.
and depending on business placement, there's a variety of factors. We could put one down and then a year later get a lot of complaints. Yeah, we need to add another one. So
Okay.
they're generally, I think they're about $4,000 to $5,000 a piece. So we could add a few more if council directed us to that. But we really proposed this, and the plans kind of recommend this to really further fuel the economic development of the area. We see a lot of visitors downtown. Generally, when you start seeing a lot of the parking spaces taken up over time, a day, you want to start encouraging turnover a bit more. So that way we can get more people down there. I talked briefly about if you meter the primary spots like Campus Corner, we make the lot cheaper or free. You might park in the lot for free, which frees up a spot in front of a business for somebody else to drive right to, right? Or if you live 2 blocks away, instead of driving to the free parking spot, you might, I'm going to walk those 2 blocks, So
Sure. Okay.
just encourages people to rethink their travel plans and possibly increase the availability for parking, premier parking for others.
Would you say that our current setup of 1 or 2 hour limit encourages turnover though?
I think so. I mean, that's a very good step to get people to encourage moving along, right? But this might make people think instead of, not loitering is not the right word, but instead of hanging out for the entire time that they can, they might pay for an hour and then move along rather than sitting there for 2 hours, right? So just, again, different mindset of I'm actually paying for my time here at this spot, so I might be more cognizant of how I'm spending my time.
Councilmember Schuler?
But maybe to counter that narrative a little bit about like our businesses, maybe you're not just patroning one business and you need to do multiple stops, or you want to
Sure.
spend more time in downtown, and so having kind of a restriction on that doesn't really encourage business
Yep.
patronage in a better way. So like I think there's kind of 2 sides to that potential turnover, especially in our downtown area when we have restaurants and like law firms and other businesses. Like we have a different mix than we do in Campus Corner, which is very kind of retail heavy. There is a different footprint
Right.
on Main Street.
Like salons, those would be
Right.
another where you spend 2 hours or more.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I don't know that I mentioned this, but I believe the Gray Street lot is actually I think you can pay for more than 2 hours at.
Yeah, you
So
can stay
again, if people are staying a longer term, maybe they find the spots that they can stay that aren't time restricted or that are cheaper and you can pay for longer times, like a full day. And again, that frees up a spot for somebody to, drop off in front of a neighborhood jam and go eat, right? Instead of you taking that spot for a longer period of time. So no, it won't fit everybody's schedule, but again, it might help push people that are staying in downtown longer to those spots that they can stay in longer, right?
Do we
That are
have
further off.
metrics on like how many people are utilizing the Gray Street lot, and like how often is it full? I mean, most of the time when I drive by, it's not as
Yeah.
full, but maybe that's just the times.
We
But
have
I'm
full
there.
utilization data. Counselor, it's been a while since we
Mhm.
gathered it together, but yeah, because of the base stations, we have that data. And we have at times have done some counting of cars just to
Yeah.
confirm that, so happy to do that. It's been a while.
Yeah, and some of the Gray Street lot is leased, I think about 40 spots, so that takes up some of the spaces. just as an aside, we might be encouraging less use of the Gray Street lot, even though it's only 25 cents, by not charging for the premier spots, right? So why would I pay to park in Gray Street lot when I can just circle around and hopefully find one right outside the business, right? So that it's a little bit backwards from traditionally you would charge for the spots that everybody wants on Main Street rather than the lot that's a block off, right? So not saying it has something to do with it, but it could. I mean, we haven't surveyed people, but
At our next meeting, perhaps, could we get an update on how the Gray Street lot's being used and what our revenue from it is?
sure. We
Thanks.
can definitely do our best. And then I think we talked about generating more revenue by doing the downtown proposal. Based on the fee, there's an online tool you can use, and on the low end, probably 250,000 to 520,000. On the high end, I believe the 2018 parking study estimated 250 or 270,000. So again, on the lower end, so that's probably a comfortable fund or amount to look at, which would cover the initial cost and then generate that revenue in the first 12 months whenever we would get them installed or financial year. We'd have to look at that possible rate, so that'd be a conversation with you all and the community if we move forward with the project. And then obviously maintenance of the pay stations would be the priority to keep those things running, because it's frustrating whenever you are told to pay and then it doesn't work, right? So keeping those things up and running is high priority, but you could pay on the app. We're working on making sure people are aware you can pay by text. That's something we're working through, making sure that's working properly. There's different options. And then we've talked about parking garages and other enhancing parking in the downtown area. Those revenues could be used at council or the authority board's discretion, also council if that's formed, to pay for those improvements like a debt financing or garage if we have the availability with that amount of money. And then again, the uniformity, we would still have the same pay stations as all the other areas plus OU. The next two are just, you guys know what downtown looks like, but I just highlighted the blocks. One on each side is the current proposal, but we could look at other more if we got into the project and thought that would be a better idea. And this is just the east side, so.
So Taylor, who owns the parking lot across from the Sooner Theater? Along the tracks right there?
This one right here? Or can you see? Oh, I can't see much.
The city owns that?
I think it's,
I think it's part of the lease with Sooner.
that's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's free and doesn't have a time limit or anything, so wasn't sure if it was private, okay.
So that's the presentation. Again, want to start off with the signage and the rates that was requested last month, but then dovetail onto the proposed downtown parking proposal, metering downtown parking, because it was proposed in the city manager's budget.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the information and presentation, Taylor. Comments, questions from the committee? Councilor Peacock.
So while that revenue stream is appealing, I won't deny that. I think I've got some heartburn with installing these right now as we're trying to revitalize downtown and kind of lift up this area and draw some people back down here, especially with the Gray Street construction and everything. So I think it's a decent idea. I just don't know that I'm supportive of it right now. Maybe in a few years from now. So I think that I would like to push pause on it for a little bit and kind of see how things develop in downtown and maybe reevaluate this in a couple of years. But I know I'm just one person, so.
And that's up to council's discretion. Again, this is something that we feel like the plans and studies have recommended, so we don't want to be, Sean talked about this, we don't want plans and studies to sit on a shelf.
Sure.
So we want to bring those things to you all for consideration as much as we can.
Okay, Councilor Schuler?
Yeah, I guess my question was, we've had, these plans for a number of years. Like, why was now the deciding factor to moving this forward, in kind of alignment with what Councilmember Peacock was saying about, like, we have so much already going on in
Sure.
this area. I mean, Porter, James Garner, Gray Street, like, we're having all of these, like, shuffling and redevelopment. Like, I don't know that now is the time. Like, I understand it's proposed and we have to, you know, keep an eye towards the future, but like, why was now selected as the moment?
So the last plan was adopted December 2018, and 3 months before that, OU let the city know that you would be possibly taking over transit system. So parking and then transit came under Sean's umbrella in Public Works, and the parking is, if I can, Sean, has just not been something we've focused on as a city.
Sure.
We've collected revenues for the areas that we've done, but we really haven't pushed the envelope on what we could or what's been recommended to do, just because we don't have the staff time, right? So there hasn't really been a dedicated parking function or person outside of enforcement, I would say, to really push these along. And then after the transit takeover, which kind of took up a lot of oxygen in the room, we had COVID, which I think a lot of places, thankfully, we weren't dependent on parking revenues that much, because a lot of areas were like, wow, we're missing out on hundreds, if not millions of dollars, because nobody's out and about going to these places that we were collecting revenues on. So that would be another reason we push pause. And then just me working into this new position and trying to grapple what we're currently doing, while also trying to not let plans sit on the shelf, but bring those to you for consideration. So.
If I may, Councilor, the other driver is this conversation about a parking authority.
Sure.
As Taylor mentioned, the joint study with the county, and that too was at sort of fever pitch discussion back in 18 and 19. COVID hit, and we just stopped talking about it. And now there's been renewed interest to bring back that parking authority, perhaps a joint authority between the city and the county. And with that, now you're back to discussing, okay, where's the revenue come from? What's the structure? How are you going to operate this? What does Norman want parking to be in the future? So that's really, I think, what we think has driven the city manager to challenge us to do more.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, you know, like we've seen the presentation about, you know, the Transportation and Parking Authority, and I think moving in that direction is, you know, a positive one with what, you know, Oklahoma City and Tulsa are doing with their kind of situations as well. I think we're just slightly behind kind of what they've been doing, but I guess my concern is that, like, yes, I think it makes sense moving forward, but we really do need to, I would say, like, bring in our downtown community and the you know, property owners that are going to be affected by making a decision like this. And so I think there just needs to, like Councilmember Peacock said, like a pause. We need to push the pause button, and really get that buy-in, really have those community conversations about like what our plans are, what does this look like, and not to mention that, you know, we were talking earlier this morning about, you know, look at all the parking lots in downtown. You know, what are we going to do? What is our development strategy for Center City? What does the future of this look like? And I would feel like this would be premature without having that full, robust conversation about all of it kind of coming together.
Councilor Peacock?
I guess, yeah, just kind of follow up on that, to discuss what a potential benefit might be to business owners in the area. What would be plans for this revenue? You said $250,000, $500,000. Is that annually?
That's what we were
projection?
estimating, yeah.
Would that be reinvested back in this area in terms of, I mean, kind of like what we were trying to do with the bid, the Business
Right.
Improvement District?
Well, to be candid, we talked a little bit last week at Finance Committee about we're trying to, if we form the authority, we're really trying to see where the current parking revenues and expenses are. So we're already enforcing downtown. So if we're not meeting our expenses already, those funds could help with paying for that enforcement that we're already doing. But it could be reinvested into really at council's discretion, but we would propose looking at furthering other things in the plan, like a garage on Main Street, if that's not too grandiose of a thing, right? Which a permanent structure like that might give a property owner that owns a parking lot, it might like, well, okay, maybe I can develop that surface lot into something else because this garage is right here. It's not going anywhere, right? We have some parking nearby, so.
So I think that's the angle I'd be looking at. You know, I know there's a lot of heartburn with it right now, but it could be a real benefit if structured correctly, and there's a benefit to the downtown business owners. But I think, yeah, like you were saying,
Yeah.
really need to get buy-in and input from all those stakeholders and make sure that we're doing.
And even if it didn't make enough money to do the projects, we think that at some point areas get to a point where you want to encourage more turnover. And that's kind of where this recommendation comes to, where we want to just keep people moving, not wanting to kick them out, obviously, but if we can get more bodies in the area by parking, but also transit, walking, biking, then we think that's, and generally around the country, that's a good thing to get more people downtown.
I think the only place I ever have a hard time finding a spot is in front of Neighborhood Gym.
Yeah.
It's the only place. And then you've got Front Street, which you can, or James Garner, which you can go find.
Go
So
one block over.
And if we put a pause on this and we have all these other projects that come to completion, James Garner pushing more people to downtown, right, easier access, maybe the utilization just keeps going up and we.
One of the advantages of the Parking Trust Authority is that they can take on debt financing. That's why COPTA
COPTA,
exists in
yep.
Oklahoma City. That's
Right.
why larger cities are using that mechanism, but you have to have a revenue source. And usually that comes from parking.
yeah, because you have to make debt service on it still. So yeah,
That's the way that works.
makes sense.
And we talked about subsidies last week, so obviously you can, at your discretion, if the transit and parking fund, if it's established, isn't meeting its financial obligations, there would have to be a subsidy from council and the general fund. But we've been doing our best for transit to get out of that situation. I know that's been a goal of the city, so we would try to do our best to do that with parking as well.
I think if we could kind of reverse engineer this a little bit and find out what it would take to implement a parking garage and then back up from there and say, these are the revenues needed, how many parking meters, what's the rate need to be? And then take that to the business owners and say, okay, would this kind of make you feel good about the proposal?
Right.
Because right now, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's just an added burden and there's no real benefit. Maybe future benefit, but no immediate benefit, so.
Except for the possible turnover. I just don't want
Except
to
for
lose,
that.
I don't want to lose that.
No,
part of
that's
it,
fair. I think the area for the most part does a good job of policing itself, at least west of the tracks. I know east, it's a little more in high demand, but there's plenty of side street options, other parking lot options. We just need to normalize that it's okay to park a block away and walk. I mean, it's just.
Yep.
We're not in any hurry here.
No, this-
Sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox a little bit here. No, I'm just.
This
yeah.
is in
You
the-
won't hurt our feelings if you don't want to do meters.
This is in
This
the
is not
proposed budget, right?
We're just trying to bring to you what we thought were the priorities
Yeah,
and the
no,
plan that you adopted.
I appreciate you guys trying to think outside of the box on this one and put pen to paper.
Yeah, it's the start of the conversation, I
Yeah.
think,
You
but
bet.
Yep.
not maybe ready to fully realize, the project yet, but
I would only say that, again, during those studies in 2017, 18, and 16, 15, 16, there was robust community discussion, not so much on this particular
Yeah.
issue, but I can promise you, we had many, many conversations, we had task forces, we had all kinds of things, and all of those ideas came out of that. And again, then you have COVID, and everyone forgets what we talked about.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, re-emphasis on the, lost 2 years of COVID, and right, people are just now kind of coming back, poking their heads back out to say like, oh, what's happening, and then,
Yep.
you kind of, I guess, slap them with this, and they're like, sorry, I don't remember what happened 4 years ago.
It's happening a lot,
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to downplay the support this room probably has for a parking garage. I mean, I think we're all on board to get
Yeah.
this parking
Well, that
structure.
was really what was in the 26 study, and then,
Right.
again, we've just never been able to find a way to finance it.
I completely understand that, yeah.
We're happy to
Chicken and the
circle
egg.
back around to that.
Yep.
You say Councilmember Grant?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just want to echo what they've already said about timing, and also another CPTC, we did talk about the towing issue, so optically, altogether, it's a bit much, so.
Again, this is just the proposed project. Wasn't meant to try to, get anybody upset or
This
anything.
is smart.
Discussion.
We just want to have
We're
just
used
like
to it.
any other project that's proposed in the budget, just the discussion and council at this
Oh, it's
discretion
good
can
to
change.
talk about these issues
Absolutely.
and get feedback, and for sure. So I do appreciate that you have brought it forward for us to consider.
Last week, I spoke to Mr. Caranda with Downtowners and tentatively penciled in to come speak to Downtowners about this now that it is in the proposed budget.
Okay.
Which that doesn't have to change your mind, but maybe we'll still have that conversation just to.
I think you should. I think you should.
So,
Yeah.
and that
Take-
would be May 11th, I think, or May 13th.
Take some public comment and then we'll wrap it up. Mr. Adair?
I don't know where to start. First, we started an email discussion of this Tuesday with about 30 downtown folks. I don't know if anybody noticed it, but I knew Councilman Peacock and Holman on this committee. I added you two. I added the mayor. I had the city manager, and I added you, Sean, because Taylor, we didn't want to walk in here and blindside you with opposition. Tuesday, I talked to 10 or 11 people. I probably spent a half dozen hours on the phone. First, trying to find out where this originated. And I think from what y'all said, this is totally staff-driven. I found absolutely no one in downtown who is in favor of this. I mean, I hate to be this honest. This isn't a bad idea. This is a terrible idea. Sean, you've been here for 15 years. I've probably been in 100 downtowners meetings with you. I hear this last Thursday in a chamber meeting, and literally my response was, would you like for me to spend the next hour reiterating the 40-year discussion we've had on 1 hour versus 2 hour free versus metered parking downtown? Downtowners has been phenomenally involved in this. And you got to understand, everything downtown is 25 foot wide by 140 foot deep. Most of them cover 100% of their lot and have no dedicated parking. The only parking they have is the public parking in their front door. It's good and it's bad. You have a conflict between the retailers and the restaurants and the offices. Most of the offices want to park right at their front door. Any of us would. With 1 hour parking, they have to move their car fairly frequently. It has stayed 1 hour because with 2 hour parking, they only have to go out and move their car once in the afternoon. With metered parking, all they have to do is go out and plug the meter. It doesn't encourage turnover, it discourages it. The Gray Street parking lot was the salvation. That gave you a 2 hour solution if you were going to a salon, at least certainly in the 3 blocks of east. And we've got opportunities to do county parking garages west of the railroad tracks. They've just never been built. The city owns 5 lots across street from service experts. It's being set up, but when we hear this is in the budget that was on first reading last Tuesday, and we've never talked about it at Downtowners. I mean, guys, we're more involved than that. I would just beg you in the future, let us get engaged a little earlier than that. The parking studies, the 2018 study, Sean, is that the Carter Burgess study?
No, it's the Kinley Horn study.
No, that was the second one.
Kinley Horn was at 2018, and then
What was the first one?
Jacobs was 2016.
Okay, Jacobs was the 2016 study, which was the city study, which was partially funded by the county.
It was City County, yeah.
I was one of 3 public members of that committee. It was a terrible committee. It was a terrible report. It was, we had the same consultant that we'd had 15 years before. He updated his numbers and regurgitated the same solutions. It was not good. The county was, in my opinion, very unhappy with it. The next year, we did it again at the county level, basically, with the city contributing. The Kinley Horn study is a really good report. I mean, if you get back into the appendices of it, it talks in detail about how you manage a parking garage. There's a wealth of information there. Taylor, I think you're pulling stuff out of context. My recollection from both of those committees was that parking meters on Main Street were only to be considered after we had a major parking garage in place. At that point, we've got an abundance of parking. There's been a parking garage is covered parking. They're expensive to build. It'll be $1 an hour. At that point, you're probably going to raise the Gray Street lot from 25 cents to 50 cents to encourage people to go over there. At that point, you may want to look at meters. To do it now, I'll kiss you if you can find anybody downtown that thinks that putting a parking meter in front of their business helps their business. This is so far from placemaking, I don't even want to go into it.
Appreciate your comments. Others?
Amen. And I'm not kissing anybody though. The other
Scott,
follow-up,
change.
since Jim mentioned it was in the budget, it's been proposed. Is that an amendment that occurs the night that it's adopted, or will it be taken out before then?
It has to be an amendment, as I understand it, to take it out.
I think that's right.
It was on first reading last Tuesday.
It was a public hearing.
Public hearing, I thought it was first reading. No? Okay.
Could you
My
take it
understanding
out?
that any changes after the proposal has to be an amendment on the night of the final.
There will be
hearing.
several.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna lose sleep until June the
13th.
whatever.
Well, we'll continue talking about the budget through finance committee and through study sessions, and so staff will start to, they've already started a list of amendments, and so we can get this added, and so that could give you less heartburn about, knowing that it is coming as a proposed amendment to take it out.
So you guys are amicable to going ahead and adding that amendment?
I think so.
I am.
So, okay.
Just if I may, Councilor,
Please.
so on next Tuesday is your study session on the capital budget, that's where this is. Again, we're budgeting 18 months out, so when these ideas are floated, to the city manager, he's thinking, well, if council wants to do this, we need to have the money in that budget out maybe a year from now. So that's how it ends up. So if this is not something that you all want to do, tell the city manager and he'll take it out of his budget, and that's the way that works.
Well, my thoughts are very similar to others. I think it's a good discussion. We need to have it, get an update about it. I would agree that I don't think right now is the right time to do it. I would prefer that the Parking and Transit Authority of Norman get established first. And I would definitely, with something like this, like to see buy-in from downtowners, merchants, and property owners. Because I think a lot of the changes we made with parking on Campus Corner has largely been driven by support from the Campus Corner Association, like increasing the rates, extending it to 9 p.m., which is something I didn't really want to do, but the businesses thought it would be a good idea at the time. So that's what I would probably like to see happen if this were to be implemented in the future, is we have the parking authority created, and then we have buy-in and support from downtown businesses and property owners if that's what they want to go for. Maybe when Main Street goes to two-way one day, that could be an opportunity then maybe to look at that too. But anyway, I think that's what I would prefer, is get some buy-in and have the authority created perhaps before we make this change. And especially with all the projects, I think we've got a lot changing downtown right now, and maybe we could hold back on this until there's maybe some, again, public support for it. And so I think the consensus of the committee here is that CPTC committee does not recommend that we go forward with this in this year's budget, and that we think about some of those authority creation and getting buy-in from downtowners in the future. So if we're in agreement with that, I think so. Okay. Thank you very much, staff.
Thank you for the discussion.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all for attending and giving your comments about it. And if there's no further questions or comments, all right, then we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.